protocols observed. May I start with a preamble, which I think I'm duty-bound to comment on. How long do I have?
2 minutes.
So I will still just say that 30 years ago, I was here. I was very optimistic, along with some other gray heads here. And those who are not here, Mr. Dotun Suleiman is here, along with the likes of the young people then, in the early 30s, who this country did very well by, the Atidor Peter sides, the Fola Adeolas, the Gbenga Oyebodis, and so on and so forth. And we're very optimistic. And we heard pretty much what we have heard today. But there's a missing ingredient. Just like for the Spanish football team up till about 2010, when they won the World Cup, there was a missing ingredient. They had everything, the talent, and so on and so forth. I think the missing ingredient for us was a certain type of leadership. And I think you heard earlier today that this may very well be the leader that can bring us all together and take this country forward. I also want to thank the Economic Summit team, particularly the likes of Ijoma Taylor, Sonyade Okoli, who determinedly pushed and pushed to make sure that Mr. President was in a position to have enough information to keep his promise. It's not easy delivering a president. I think they did very, very well. I just did my job. I can't imagine being here and I didn't deliver the president and facing you all. So it was the fear of that that propelled me. In terms of the economy, the priority areas are there, and they all boil down to improving livelihoods, delivering economic outcomes, the human resources aspect, and of course, a fairer and more level playing field, particularly for young people to express themselves, as we had the opportunity in our days. But there are enough brilliant people here that no matter what the conditions, they will excel. In order to provide the platform for the priority areas, the first thing that is happening is economic stabilization, focusing on, first of all, the fiscal side, revenues from various sources, the traditional sources, oil, but also taxation and so forth. Then on the monetary side, the governor of Central Bank is not here. Mr. President is somebody that believes in rule of law, and that includes respecting the autonomy of the central bank, both in the letter and in the spirit. However, it is one government, and at the end of the day, foreign exchange belongs first and foremost to the federal government, not to the central bank. So I can speak on that. And finally, in terms of stabilization, the other area is getting a hang of the fiscal deficit, making sure that the deficit is reduced, making sure that the deficit is funded in a conventional way. And that means dealing with ways and means. Ways and means is essentially outside the law, and it is not a sustainable way to be funding the federal budget. So those are the areas in which the government has a plan that is coherent and that will provide the basis for investment and growth. Thank you. Thank you very much. The partnership is very welcome, and it's already in progress. Let me say that in responding to your question, may I also have permission to deal with the elephant in the room, which effectively is, and I see the governor of Central Bank walks in, and I am sure you'll invite him. I'm sure you'll invite him to the podium. There's a seat for him here.
In that case, I will interrupt you, Honorable Minister, and I'd like to invite the CBN governor to join us on stage. We have
So, as I was saying, in terms of, let me take it like this, in terms of coordination, monetary and fiscal policy, in terms of monetary and fiscal policy, we all know there are consequences for monetary policy. If the governor of central bank feels that in delivering it on his own mandate within his own terms of reference, he has to increase interest rates, of course, that has an effect on the fiscal side because the government is a borrower, its debt service costs go up, and so on and so forth. There is coordination. There are two coordinating roles. There's a coordinating Minister of the Economy, there's a coordinating Minister of Social Welfare. In our role as coordinating the economy, we do have a meeting where we sit down with the core of the economy, including the Governor of Central Bank, Minister of Power, Minister of Trade, Minister of Agriculture, and so on and so forth. And so we meet regularly, we try and make sure that objectives are aligned, we track priorities, and we look at the sequencing of the various actions. So that coordination is going on. In terms of monetary fiscal policy, the 43 items that have recently been allowed to as legitimate and eligible for foreign exchange is really an example of the kind of overlapping that will not take place under the presidency of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. A monetary instrument, which is foreign exchange, was used to deliver a fiscal objective, which was to protect domestic industry and to encourage local output. That is being rectified. The ban has been lifted, but on the fiscal side, there is a study under a very able Fiscal Policy and Tax Reform Committee led by the very able Taiwo Oyedele. Is one of yours, and that's part of the partnership, in fact. So to make sure that industries that need to be protected are protected, to make sure that industries that actually need to import have tariff regimes which allow them to import, and so on and so forth. So that's part of the correction. We are already in partnership with the private sector. Mr. President announced that he had that he has taken measures to deal with the illiquidity in the foreign exchange market, which we know is very problematic at this time. As I say, the governor of central bank is here, but in the coordinating role, I will just give some insight as to those measures, which I think you will all be very interested in. The market is illiquid. It's not functioning properly because there is not enough supply of foreign exchange, and there are various reasons for that. The solution that Mr. President has put on the table is, number one, he has signed an executive order that effectively legally allows, under forbearance, all the cash that is in the domestic economy to legally come into the formal money supply. People will be able to take the cash that they have and put it inside the system. Along with that, there's another executive order that allows the domestic issuance of foreign currency instruments so that they will have an incentive to provide that foreign exchange from whatever source into income-bearing instruments. Alongside that, there is as part of the a wider sort of review, there is a revamping of the foreign exchange market such that, and the details are available, and I just don't want to go through it step by step, and I'm sure a frequently asked questions sheet will be put out in due course. The foreign exchange market will be simplified, it will be digitalized, and it will be reformed such that all legal and legitimate transactions will fall within the purview of the authorities and a formal market. Anything outside that will be illegal and will be a criminal offense and will be punished. And it will be robustly followed up, so that if you want to pay school fees, if you want to pay a health bill, it will be simplified, and you'll be able to just provide perhaps an identity such as a BVN, NIN, and you'll do your transaction. It will be formal, but you'll be a price taker. Right now, the tail is wagging the dog. A marginal transaction by you to pay school fees will not now change the foreign exchange rate, because that will be determined just like in a stock exchange. You cannot go and buy 1,000 shares in flour mills at the end of the day and then move the rate by 10%, 15%. It doesn't happen like that. A market has rules, regulations, it has price discovery, and it has price setting terms. So the foreign exchange market, whether you are dealing through a bank, whether you are dealing through a bureau de change, whether you are dealing through an app, as we all know, the apps, the technology has taken root and it's a big part of the market. All that will be within the formal market, and we expect with that liquidity will come. But in addition, from supply of foreign exchange from NNPC, increased production, reduced expenditure, from transactions such as forward sales, from our discussions with sovereign wealth funds that are ready to invest and front load, provide advance funding alongside that investment, there is a line of sight on $10 billion worth of inflow of foreign exchange in a relatively near future, in weeks rather than months. These measures, taken as a whole and comprehensively, should lead to the flow of foreign exchange. As we know, remittance transactions are now done offshore. They are not coming into the market. I think, I hope I've said enough to answer the question, deal with the elephant in the room, and give you the confidence that will begin, or rather made statements that will begin to restore the confidence that we need to have the foreign exchange market work efficiently and with a high level of liquidity. Over to the Governor of Central Bank. Thank you.
I was going to say that. Thank you, Honorable Minister.
Yeah, thank you. The executive orders were signed by Mr. President, I think last Thursday. They'll be processed and gazetted. I've already said what the import of them is. And I must say it is partnership with the private sector that has delivered these solutions. And even the other, some of the other solutions that I alluded to as to, improving the whole ecosystem of the foreign exchange markets, as Mr. Governor of Central Bank mentioned. It is partnership, it is consultation that has brought forward these solutions. And finally, and you can even take it as my closing statement, that Mr. President's commitment is to work with the private sector. His source of financing for growth is the private sector. Around the world, at the World Bank meetings, the emphasis was on dealing with the shocks that have led to low growth and high inflation. The developed world is only interested in fighting inflation. That they see, the central bank see it as their core mandate. Interest rates will remain high. It is partnership with the private sector, their money, their ingenuity, their ideas that will be used to propel the Nigerian economy and other developing economies. There is nothing out there for us except private capital. Thank you.